Hello and welcome to this brief video on management skills training. The idea of this video is to help you identify specific areas of management skills you or your team may require. So we were to look at a definition, and I'm talking about the most simple definition of management. We could consider it to be the following. Management is the ability to get things done. Now, obviously, it's the right things you need to be doing as a manager. So, you think about it. Lots of people, you may have experienced this, may know a manager, or may be exposed to several different types of managers. And some managers are very good at getting things done, and some managers are not so good at getting things done. So what's the difference between a manager who is good at doing things and one is not so good? Effectively, it boils down to skills and knowledge. Because in essence, what a manager is endeavoring to do is to coordinate using skills and knowledge. And what are they trying to coordinate? They're trying to coordinate two things: resources and people. So resources will be things like equipment or processes or materials, and then people will be those people who are reporting to them, their team members as such. So the issue is, if the difference between a good manager and a bad manager boils down to skills and knowledge, how do we identify what skills and knowledge would make you better as a manager or even as a team member as such? A way we can look at this is we can utilize what's referred to as the Collins High Performance Framework. And this framework is a diagnostic tool so we can identify problems, and it's also a training tool so we can rectify those problems as well. And effectively, there's 4 areas that we need to look at in relation to it. And all I'm going to do is run through these areas with you and explain what they mean. So the first area we need to look at is referred to as capacity. The next area we need to look at is in relation to competence. Then there's communication. And finally, there's compatibility. Now, all we need to do is identify what skills and knowledge does a manager need to master to make them good at their job and achieve high performance. And you can get somebody who's not a great manager. You can identify the deficiencies within this framework and close the gap and change them into a good manager. So what we need to do now is have a look at each individual area separately. And the first one we're going to look at is around the skill or the issue of capacity. And capacity refers to what output is required of you by your organization versus the output you achieve. And this issue around capacity causes tension within organizations because organizations need to maximize output or have performance targets that it needs to meet overall, and it's going to meet that through the output of their staff. But here's the issue, and here's the problem that arises in a number of organizations. If you are at maximum or in excess of your own capacity for a long period of time, it's going to end up with you getting stressed or irritable or sick or being overwhelmed, or you're going to start making mistakes. So it's really important for both the individual and the organization to strike a balance in relation to capacity. If you're at overcapacity, the ultimate manifestation is burnout. So that's not a good thing to find yourself in. So burnout is the worst situation. And then the other side of the coin is if you're under capacity, you're going to be exposed to boredom. And either burnout or boredom is not going to produce high performance. So think about the skills that might be involved in relation to this. Now, there's a whole range of them, and I'm only going to be able to go through a handful. But the first one I want to talk about is the skill of focus. If you have the ability to focus your attention on an activity until that task has been executed properly and you've achieved the outcome you've desired, this is a great skill to develop. And a lot of people suffer in the workplace from an inability to focus, and that could be for a whole raft of reasons. And learning the skill of focus will help you to eliminate issues that are impeding your ability to focus. Another area that's really important concerning capacity is time management. And time management is vitally important for you to focus your energies and your activities on priority tasks. And there's a skill set within time management that will allow you to do that. Another area that is particularly interesting is referred to as Clifton strengths. And Don Clifton was a gentleman who worked for Gallup, and after many years of research, he identified 34 strengths that people could have. But what he said is that you should focus on your top 5 strengths. He says people are more productive and more engaged if they don't start trying to rectify their weaknesses, but they exploit their strengths. So these are just a handful of skills that you could learn to increase your capacity. The next area we're going to look at is this issue of competence. And competence refers to hard skills, hard technical skills. So we'll call them technical skills. And there's a certain amount of technical skills that you may need to do your job effectively. And if you haven't got them, you're going to have to fill that gap very, very quickly. And when you think about these technical skills, it's specific to a particular job, because the technical skills that a pilot would need would not necessarily be the same as those of a doctor. A pilot needs to know how to use a piece of complicated equipment, i.e. a plane, and a doctor needs to be able to perform procedures or operations, and they're all different technical skills that they need. If you are an IT professional, you may need to know a number of different programming languages. And if you have deficiency in any of your technical skills, you're going to have to get specific training from experts and specialist trainers in their particular field to close that gap. The next area we're going to look at is in relation to communication. And communication is vitally important to effective management. If you have issues around the idea of communication, you're going to have problems with miscommunication, you're going to have problems with conflict, you're going to have problems with disengagement from your team members. So there's a number of things and knowledge and skills that you can acquire to make you a better communicator. If you have an understanding of the different types of communication styles, you'd be better placed to communicate in a more effective way with your team members. So there's a variety of different styles out there. You could have a submissive communication style, you could have an assertive communication style, you could have a passive-aggressive communication style. Being aware of what they are and when they're appropriate to use will make you so much better as a communicator. Another area of communication that's really important is understanding listening levels. And there's 5 different levels of listening, ranging from ignoring, where you're literally making a concerted effort not to listen to somebody, and all the way up to empathetic listening, which means that you're listening in a manner that you can understand the perspective of the person that's speaking to you. And developing your listening skills would make you so much more effective as a communicator. Another thing or another skill that you could use would be to know how to condense a message. And the briefer the message, the less room there is for misunderstanding. And it's very helpful if you have developed a skill to reduce the word count or the time it takes to explain things to your team or your staff members. And these are just a handful of skills that you could use. Anything around communication that you find a gap in, if you plug that gap, it can increase results dramatically in a very, very short period of time. The last area I just want to have a brief look at is in relation to compatibility. And compatibility is the ability to consistently interact with others in a positive and productive manner. And this is a very important skill of a manager, but it also helps if your team members have compatibility skills. If there's a lack of compatibility between you and your team or between members of your team, you're going to find things like staff avoiding each other. You're going to have unnecessary conflict, increase in tension. So lots of negatives that would happen if there's a lack of compatibility. So again, compatibility is the ability to consistently interact with others in a positive and productive manner. So there's certain skills that you can develop that will make you better at compatibility. And one of them is the skill of influence. And there's a lot of research done in the area of psychology of influence and persuasion that are actually very simple techniques that you can use pretty much immediately after learning them, but it takes a while to perfect them. So that's a very interesting area in order to improve your compatibility. Another area that you might want to consider looking at will be around the idea of social styles. And social styles are the behaviors that people engage with when they're interacting with other people. There are 4 social styles: analytical, driver, expressive, and amiable. And by having an understanding of these and how to flex your behavior to match the behavior of somebody else, you'll find you'll have a better level of compatibility and more positive, productive interactions with people. And then there's other skills that you could learn. You could learn about performance, enhancing, coaching. And this will help you get the best out of your team members by teaching them what they need to know and how they need to overcome barriers, and avoiding this concept of learned helplessness where you're spoon feeding your team members. So this is a very specific set of skills that you can learn in relation to this, in relation to compatibility and getting people working together. Now, just to be aware that this is not an exhaustive list by any manner of means, but it just gives you a flavor of how you can use this framework to identify gaps in your skill set or those of your team, and know how to focus your attention to close that gap. So I hope you found this information of value to you. If you'd like to find out more about any of the learning material that I produce, you can have a look at my website, which is michaellukecollins.com. Thank you for watching.